The glint of tarnished metal caught Officer Ben Carter's eye, a sudden, jarring flash against the polished black granite of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. It lay nestled in a shallow depression at the base of Panel 32E where the names of the fallen spiraled towards the sky, just beyond the reach of the old man's trembling fingers. A dog tag. Not a cheap souvenir, but the real thing, scarred and bent, reflecting the overcast DC sky like a lost soul. The old man, his shoulders slumped beneath a worn Marine Corps jacket, let out a choked sound, a low, guttural gasp that spoke of decades of buried pain. His eyes, roomy and distant, were fixed on the tag, his face a roadmap of grief and regret. A group of high schoolers on a field trip, their laughter echoing a little too loudly, jostled past. One, head buried in his phone, accidentally nudged a discarded coffee cup, sending a thin stream of muddy water towards the dog tag. Another, noticing the old man's distress, snickered. "Lost your lucky charm, Grandpa?" he muttered, loud enough to be heard. The words, sharper than any blade, seemed to pierce the solemn air, slicing through the thin veil of respect that usually clung to the wall. Eli Vance, 78 years old, a Vietnam veteran who'd seen more horror than most could imagine, felt a cold knot tighten in his gut. This was worse than any ambush. This was the final indignity. Dawn had broken gray and solemn over the National Mall, wrapping the iconic structures in a shroud of quiet reverence. Officer Ben Carter, 32, a National Park Service ranger assigned to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, moved with the practiced, almost invisible grace of a shadow. His uniform, a crisp dark green, was immaculate, his movements economical as he patrolled the winding path alongside the wall. He was a sentinel, a silent guardian of hallowed ground, a duty he'd sought out after leaving the army. For years ago, the dust and heat of Helmand Province had claimed more than just his youth. As an army medic, he'd seen things that clawed at the edges of his sleep, the frantic scramble under fire, the smell of cordite and blood, the impossible choices. His squad leader, Sergeant Lena "Ghost" Ramirez, a woman whose calm under pressure was legendary, had died shielding a group of Afghan children during a market ambush. Ben had been too slow, too far, too useless. He'd earned a commendation, but it felt like a lie. Every step he took now, every name he passed on the wall, was a silent penance. He'd chosen this quiet post, away from the chaos of patrol, to be near those who understood the true cost of freedom. He thought of Lena often, her sardonic grin, her unwavering gaze. "You keep breathing, Carter," she'd said once, her voice raspy from a week of sandstorms. "That's the hardest part. Make it count." The air was still, save for the whisper of the wind through the bare trees and the hushed murmurs of the morning visitors. Families, some with small children, others with faces etched by time and sorrow, moved slowly along the granite panels, searching for names, tracing them with fingertips. Ben's gaze, trained to observe without intruding, swept the scene. He saw a young woman weeping silently, a child placing a small American flag at the base of the wall, and then the old man. Eli Vance. The name echoed in Ben's mind, though he hadn't heard it spoken aloud. The man's posture, the way his hand instinctively went to his jacket sleeve where a faded Marine Corps patch was stitched, spoke volumes. Vietnam. Eli had been just a kid when he shipped out in '68, a fresh-faced private thrown into the meat grinder of Khe Sanh. He'd seen McMillan fall, a burst of AK-47 fire, a scream that was cut short. Corporal Mac McMillan. His best friend. Mac, who'd laughed louder than anyone, who'd shared his last sea ration, who'd held that ridge for 3 brutal hours, buying time for Eli and the others to pull back with vital intelligence. Mac had been a hero, but his name wasn't on any grand monument, just a small, tarnished dog tag Eli had retrieved from the mud that day, a grim promise whispered to a dying friend. "I'll never forget you, Mac." Never. For 56 years, that dog tag had been Eli's anchor, his burden. He carried it through the spitting protests back home, through the long, silent nights, through the struggles to find work and peace. He'd hidden it away, too painful to look at, too sacred to discard. But lately, the weight had become unbearable. He'd driven across 3 states, the tag clutched in his arthritic hand, determined to finally bring Mac home, to leave a piece of him at the wall with his brothers. He wanted to hang it on one of the names, a small, private ceremony. But his fingers, stiff with age and a tremor that had grown steadily worse, betrayed him. The tag slipped. It hit the polished granite with a faint, metallic clink, a sound that reverberated through Eli's chest like a rifle shot. It skittered, bouncing once, twice, and then settled in a small, muddy depression just beyond the velvet rope barrier, almost hidden by a crumpled tissue and a discarded plastic water bottle. Out of reach. Out of his grasp. Eli froze, his breath catching in his throat. The sound wasn't just a clink, it was the rattle of spent shell casings, the distant thud of incoming mortars. Mac's final, choked gasp. The teenager's snickers, amplified by the silent reverence of the wall, cut through him. Old man dropped his junk, one of them said, kicking a pebble towards the tag. Probably fake anyway. A woman nearby, her scarf fluttering in the breeze, snapped, "Have some respect." But no one else moved. The crowd remained a respectful distance, observing, not interfering. It was the rule. The unspoken code of the memorial: observe, reflect, but do not disturb. Ben saw it all. His jaw tightened. The dog tag, Mac's legacy, lay there, mocked by indifference, almost swallowed by the grime. Protocol was clear. Park rangers maintained order, provided information, but they did not intervene in personal moments, especially not to cross the barrier onto the hallowed ground itself. Their duty was to preserve the sanctity of the memorial, to be an impartial presence. His mind flashed to a moment in Kandahar a decade ago when he disobeyed a direct order to pull a wounded civilian from a burning market stall. He'd been reprimanded, but a quiet nod from his commanding officer, a grizzled Special Forces captain, had told him he'd done the right thing. Asterisk, some rules are meant to be bent, son, when the soul of a man is on the line. Asterisk, Lena's words echoed. Asterisk, make it count, Carter. Asterisk, Eli bent, his knees creaking, a low groan escaping his lips. His fingers brushed the air above the tag, agonizingly close but not quite reaching. The teenager laughed louder, a shrill, dismissive sound. Ben's gloved hand twitched. He was off his usual patrol route, drawn by some unseen force. He had been observing Eli for a few minutes, sensing the profound weight the old man carried. Now the choice was stark. Protocol said stay. Duty, the deeper, more profound duty he felt to every soldier whose name graced this wall, screamed move. He took a step, then another, deliberate, calm. The crowd, sensing a shift in the air, a break in the silent ritual, gasped, a ripple of shock spreading. A child whispered, "Mom, the ranger's moving." Ben crossed the invisible line, his boots echoing softly in the sudden silence. He knelt, movements precise, his eyes fixed on the tarnished metal. He lifted the dog tag, wiped it clean with his gloved thumb, bronze catching the faint light. It felt heavy, a small, cold disc brimming with untold stories. Standing, he faced Eli, whose eyes, wide with disbelief and then profound gratitude, locked onto his. Ben held out the tag, his voice low, steady, breaking every unspoken rule of his post. "This belongs with you, Sergeant." It's his courage. It's his story. Eli took the dog tag, his hands shaking so violently Ben thought he might drop it again. "That's Max," he whispered, his voice rough with years of unshed tears. "Corporal McMillan. He earned it holding the line, Iki-san. I thought I'd lost him again." Tears, hot and fast, spilled down his weathered cheeks. "Thank you, son. Thank you." Ben met his gaze, his own eyes steady, warm. "He's not lost, sir. None of them are." He offered a slow, crisp salute, a gesture that carried the weight of generations of unspoken promises, of lives given. Then he turned, resuming his post as if the world had not shifted on its axis. The crowd stood frozen for a moment, then a soft, reverent applause began, spreading like wildfire. A young woman, Mia-chan, 20, a college student on a history trip, had captured the entire exchange on her phone. Her fingers trembled as she posted it to Instagram, her caption simple, heartfelt, "This is what America means." A park ranger broke protocol to honor a Vietnam vet. #Wall of Heroes, #never forget. Across the plaza, Chief Anya Sharma, Ben's commanding officer, watched from the shadows of the nearby trees. Her face was stern, a pen scratching furiously in her notebook. Violation of protocol. 10:47 a.m. Ranger Carter crossed barrier, engaged civilian, spoke during duty. Recommend disciplinary action. Sharma, a decorated Gulf War veteran, saw the memorial as sacred, its rules inviolable. Carter's act was a crack in the tradition, a breach of the silent, unwavering guardianship. By noon, Mia's video had 300,000 views. By dusk, it was on CNN, X, TikTok, YouTube. Comments flooded in, "This is why we honor our troops. He broke the rules for a vet. That's a hero." Some disagreed. Rangers must be perfect. He shamed the wall. But veterans groups rallied, posting photos of their own medals, their purple hearts, their bronze stars, with the hashtag Wall of Heroes. A Marine who'd served with Eli in Vietnam, now 73 and limping, wrote on X, "That kid gave Eli his pride back. He gave Mac his voice." A VFW post in Ohio shared the video, "This is what service looks like." That night, Ben sat alone in his Spartan barracks room, his uniform hung neatly. Black coffee steamed untouched on his small table. The room was bare, a bunk, a locker, and a single framed photo of his squad in Afghanistan. Lena's fierce, intelligent eyes were front and center. Private First Class Javier Ramos, another ranger, slipped in, his boots quiet. "You knew you'd catch trouble, didn't you?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. Ben nodded, his eyes on the photo. "Saw his face, Javi? That dog tag, it was his friend's life. Couldn't let it lie there." "Chief Sharma is livid," Javi said, crossing his arms. "Said you disrespected the memorial. Might bench you for good." Ben's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Worth it. He carried that tag for 50 years. We almost let it slip away, forgotten." Javi studied him, then sat on the edge of the bunk. "You think about Afghanistan?" "About Lena." Every step, Ben said, his voice barely a whisper. The blast, the heat, Lena's hands shoving him down, the chilling silence after. He carried Lena's dog tag, a talisman against forgetting, tucked deep in his wallet. That vet Eli, he looked like he carried the same thing. "I couldn't let him lose it." Javi nodded, his eyes soft. "They won't get it at the top, Ben. But I do. We all do." In a cheap motel room near Arlington, the wallpaper peeling, Eli sat on the creaky bed, Mac's dog tag clutched in his hands. Beside him, a faded photo of him and Mac in Vietnam, two kids grinning despite the mud and the fear. He hadn't looked at it in decades, too afraid of the pain. Now he traced Mac's youthful face. "You made it to the wall, Mac," he murmured. "Someone saw you. Someone cared." He turned on the TV, the news blaring. Ben's salute filled the screen, blurry but unmistakable. The anchor's voice was grave. "A park ranger's unprecedented act of compassion has sparked debate, tradition versus humanity. We'll explore after the break." Eli's chest tightened. His private pilgrimage was now national news. He thought of the years after Vietnam, the protesters at the airport, the nights he'd drunk himself numb just to forget. Mac's dog tag, his legacy, had been his anchor. Proof their fight had meant something. Today, a young ranger had reminded him it still did. The next morning, Ben faced a disciplinary board at the National Park Service headquarters. Chief Sharma presided, her face like granite. 3 other officers flanked her, their uniforms bristling with ribbons. "Ranger Carter," Sharma began, her voice sharp. "You violated the memorial's sanctity at 10:47 yesterday. You crossed the barrier, spoke, engaged a civilian. Explain yourself." Ben stood at attention, his posture flawless. "I honored a soldier's sacrifice, Chief. That dog tag belonged to Corporal McMillan, earned in blood at Kisan. It fell. No one else moved. I couldn't let it be mocked. The wall isn't just for the unknown. It's for every soldier who served, living or dead." Sharma's eyes narrowed, penetrating. "Your duty is the ritual, Ranger. Not playing hero. The memorial demands perfection, not sentiment." "With respect, Chief," Ben said, his voice firm. "My duty is to the men whose names are carved on that wall and to the ones still standing, carrying their weight." That veteran deserved better than laughter. Silence settled thick in the room. A retired colonel, his chest heavy with medals, cleared his throat. "Recommendation: 1 week suspension. Public statement of regret." Ben's gaze held steady. "I won't regret honoring a veteran, sir. Not now, not ever." The room felt smaller, the air charged. Sharma leaned back, her jaw tight. She understood sacrifice, but tradition was her gospel. Ben's defiance was a direct challenge. Urged by a reporter, Eli visited a VFW post in Arlington. The room was packed, gray-haired veterans, younger ones from Iraq and Afghanistan, all nursing beers, sharing stories. Eli stood, Mac's dog tag pinned to his jacket beside his own faded ribbons, its weight grounding him. "This ain't just metal," he said, his voice steady, carrying across the room. "It's Mac. Corporal McMillan. He was 19. Held a ridge for 3 hours, saved my life. Every kid we lost is in this medal. That ranger, Ben Carter, he didn't just pick it up. He picked me up. Don't punish him. Give him a medal." The room erupted, fists pounding on tables, cheers echoing. A young vet recorded it, posted it to X. By nightfall, it was on Fox News, MSNBC, every outlet. Mia's video, now at 2 million views, fueled a firestorm. Hashtag Wall of Heroes trended with 1.5 million posts. A petition to commend Ben, not suspend him, surged to 400,000 signatures. A 12-year-old girl from Ohio whose father was an Iraq vet posted a watercolor of Ben saluting Eli, captioned, "This is what heroes do." A Vietnam-era chopper pilot shared his Bronze Star photo, writing, "Carter reminded us why we fought." A Texas history teacher had her class write essays on the video. One student noted, "He broke the rules, but he fixed something bigger." In Congress, during a Veterans Day address, a Virginia senator invoked Ben's name. "If we punish compassion, we dishonor the soldiers we serve." Ranger Carter showed us duty isn't just standing still. It's stepping forward. The chamber applauded, the sound carrying to newsrooms across the country. Chief Sharma, alone in her office, felt the pressure mounting. She rewatched Mia's video, pausing on Eli's face, the relief, the tears, the profound pride. Sharma, no stranger to loss herself, had buried friends in Desert Storm, carried their names in her own heart. She opened Ben's file, exemplary record, Purple Heart from Afghanistan, volunteered for the wall. She rubbed her temples, then typed, recommend commendation for exceptional judgment under unique circumstances. 10 days later, Eli returned to the wall. The crowd parted for him, some saluting, others nodding. A boy offered him a small flag. Ben was at his post, his steps precise, his eyes carrying a new, quiet light. At 11 a.m. a ceremony unfolded on the Memorial Plaza. A brigadier general, his chest a mosaic of ribbons, invited Eli and Ben to the center. Ben, with special permission, pinned a civilian commendation, a small silver star, onto Eli's jacket. Eli's eyes glistened, his hand clutching Mac's dog tag. For Mac, he said, his voice breaking. Ben knelt, placing a single white rose at the wall's base. For all of them, he replied, his voice quiet, resonant. The crowd stood, hands over hearts, some weeping. Mia Chin, in the front row, wiped a tear, her phone off, her heart full. A Vietnam vet in the back raised a trembling salute, his lips mouthing, thank you. Later, in his motel room, Eli hung Mac's dog tag beside his Purple Heart, the medals catching the light. He pulled out the photo of him and Mac, their grins frozen in time. He wrote a letter to Ben, though he never mailed it. You gave an old man his friend back. You gave America its soul. Don't stop. He fell asleep with the TV on, a news anchor quoting a viral post. The Ranger didn't break tradition. He built it. Ben, in his apartment, opened a drawer. Inside, Lena's dog tag, a small, folded flag, and a letter from the army. A commendation for valor. He set it down, his fingers lingering. Another weight, he whispered. But I'll carry it. He looked out, the DC skyline faint against the twilight. Somewhere, Lena was watching. 4 months later, a Vietnam vet from California visited the wall. He posted Ben's photo at his post, his silhouette stark against the marble. He moved for one of us. That's enough. Caption, the wall doesn't just hold the unknown, it holds us all. Eli passed away that spring, peacefully, Mac's dog tag in his hand, a faint smile on his face. At his funeral in a Virginia church, Ben stood in his dress blues, saluting as taps played, the notes piercing the quiet. He didn't speak, his presence a vow. Mac. Eli. Lena. Never forgotten. Weeks later, a young boy at the wall tugged his mother's sleeve, watching Ben march. Why is he so still? She knelt, her voice soft. Because he only moves when it truly matters, sweetheart. And when he does, the whole world notices. Ben heard, his face unchanged, his steps unbroken. Deep inside, he felt it. The weight of valor, light as a rose, heavy as a nation's memory. He marched on, 21 steps, carrying the past, guarding the future. This is the story of a ranger and a dog tag, of a quiet DC morning at the wall, of a rule broken to restore a promise made half a century ago. It reminds us that sometimes, in the solemn precision of duty, there must be room for a pause, for memory, for mercy. At the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, where silence is sacred and movement choreographed, one man stepped out of line not to dishonor the ritual, but to honor a life. So today, think of Mac, of Eli, of those whose courage never made headlines, but whose legacy echoes through generations. Share their story not to stir controversy, but to stir conscience. And if you ever visit the wall, watch the ranger walk his post. Count the steps and listen closely. Somewhere between the clicks of his boots, you might just hear the echo of a promise kept.